We're not all old white men anymore. Today on the Atheist Viewpoint, the diversification of the movement. Hello and welcome to Atheist Viewpoint. I'm David Silverman, president of American Atheists, and with me today is our newest employee, Ms. A.J. Johnson. Welcome, A.J., to the show and to American Atheists.
Thank you.
We've been waiting for you to start for a few months now, and we've got a whole pile of stuff for you to do. But I'm really glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you've spent your first couple of days at the center and working with us, and this is your first Viewpoint show. I'm sure hopeful that there will be many in front of us. Hi, Ron.
Hello, David. How are you? I'm Ron Barrier. How are you out there? Everybody
knows Ron at this point.
And we have quite a diverse panel here tonight already.
Yes, we have a diverse panel. So we sat down. We were trying to figure out what the show was going to be about today, and AJ suggested that she wanted to talk a little bit about diversity. And I think it's a good idea because it's an extremely important topic. It's something that we need to not pay lip service to. It's something that we need to take seriously, that we need to understand is something that is quite frankly vital to the growth of the movement. At the American Atheist National Convention, we had a diversity panel. It was our first diversity panel ever. And what do you know? A lot of other groups are doing diversity panels at their conventions now. It's almost as if it was a darn good idea.
It is a great idea.
Yeah, and you were on the diversity panel with me.
I was.
How do you think that went?
I think it went very well. I was pleased to be a part of that. I was there with Jamila Bay and some other people, and I think it went very well. And I saw the one at TAM recently, and I think that one went very well as well.
Yeah, I think they totally stole that idea from us. I mean, they totally did, didn't they?
Sure.
Sure they did. Sure they did. Yeah, let's go with
Diversity is your ideal.
You're already a great employee.
While I am quite diverse, the thing that I was hired to do was raise money for American Atheists. I've been a fundraiser and involved in fundraising at my university for the past 3 years, and now I'm going to be your development director.
And hopefully, I'm absolutely sure that you're going to be great in that role, else I wouldn't have hired you. What do you think, and Ron, I'd like to hear from you on this, okay? In the teaser for this show, I said we're not all old white men anymore. Ron, you and I you've been in this movement for as long as I've been in this movement. You predate me, which means you've been in this movement for, how long have you been here?
Well, I mean,
how long have you been involved in American Atheists?
I mean, actually involved in American Atheists was probably 11 years, from the 90s to 2001. Then I went on hiatus.
Right.
For 9 years or something like that, and decided to come back.
When did you first start with American Atheists? What was like your first year?
My first year, in fact, I'll tell you exactly what it was. I was cruising on C-SPAN and came across a little teaser that said, coming up next, the American Atheist Convention from Washington, D.C., and Madalyn Murray O'Hair will speak. Now, of course, I had heard of Madalyn Murray, which is another thing. Atheism didn't start in this country as a white woman. But when I listened to her speak, she brought up, it was uncanny, everything that I felt about living in this society. How an atheist can be marginalized, how an atheist feels that there's always like religion around him all the time, him or her. And it was at that point, after that speech, the next day I contacted American Atheists.
And that was in the mid-1990s then?
92.
Okay, so I remember when I started in 97, I think it was, we were a big group of white men.
And older.
Old white men, lots of
Yes,
gray hair,
yes.
lots of white hair.
That's the one thing that struck me, is that there was no youth, there wasn't that much diversity, there was a couple of people.
And now we've seen a substantial change. But we've got the stigma of the old white men to kind of deal with.
And I'd be curious to ask, why do you think that it is that older white men were the atheists and now that's changing?
Well,
My contribution to that would be because probably some of the most famous books written in the last few years have been by white men.
Yeah, but you're talking about in the last few years.
Right.
I mean, I'm talking about back in the 90s.
And before.
Before the God Delusion, before Sam Harris, before Dennett, before Hitchens even. When Dawkins was still writing about genes.
Hey, when Dawkins was a kid.
Right. Why was it all white men? I tend to think it was because of the lack of outreach.
I think that is part of it. I also think that a huge part of it is education. And I think a huge part of it is community. And I think when you are the majority and the quintessential majority of the white male in America, you are able to sacrifice a little bit of your social capital to come out on a ledge. And you also have the cognitive and educational resources to come to the conclusions that we've all reached.
You've talked about social capital a few times to me, and I find this interesting because you're a minority in many senses. And you've mentioned to me that somebody who is straight and atheist might find it easier to come out of the closet as an atheist than a gay atheist, right, even though there's a lot of gay atheists out there because they don't want to be another minority.
Right. They're worried about the ostracism that they'll experience for compounding all of these different levels of diversity. So, for example, it's called intersectionality. When you have multiple levels of diversity, when you are a female and a female of color and an atheist and a homosexual and all of these other things, it kind of it exacerbates the potential harm that you would have in your social situations.
See, now, I would think the exact opposite. I would say, all right, well, I'm already here.
That's how I feel. That's very much how I feel. But I think that maybe it's a snowballing effect. If you do have the option, and so many of these are invisible minorities. So if I were a white female, even if I were homosexual and an atheist, I could walk down the street and be perceived as part of the majority. So when you have these invisible minority statuses, then you're able to interact in society, and you can choose when you want to come out. You actually have to say, I'm a homosexual, or you actually have to say, I'm an atheist. No one is going to, push that upon you.
Right, right. Ron, what do you think about that whole idea of social capital, of multiple minorities gaining it? Because you're an ethnic minority, you're kind of a
yeah, and
I
felt the pangs of racism and discrimination throughout my life.
Do you think did the racism that you felt make you more or less hesitant to come out as an atheist?
I don't think it had anything to do with it, to tell you the truth. I did not experience that much racism when I was going to Catholic elementary school. However, I did feel it more when I went to Catholic high school. And I went to an all-males high school, so it's a little different. But I also got support to fight that from the brothers who taught at the Catholic high schools. In particular, one particular brother who really took me aside, and he says, I see how they look at you, and I see how they treat you. And he says, what you got to do really is just shove it down their throat. Show them by example. And so he recommended that I take up track and field. And I did, and became a state champion and a top athletic dog at the school. And eventually just ignore these guys. But there is a downside to that, is that I've never gone back to the high school again, despite all their appeals for me to come and either contribute or a dinner or something. Get out of here. I have no time for that nonsense.
I've never gotten I've never understood that. You know, it's a little off topic, but
Well,
my college calls me every once in a while and says, "Hey, will you give us money?" And although AJ won't want to hear this, it's just never going to happen. I mean, if I go out and buy a car, I don't get a call from Nissan in a year saying, "Hey, would you like to give us more money?"
Where did you go to school again?
I went to Brandeis.
And that is a...
It's a Jewish school up in Boston.
Do you think that has to do with it?
I don't know. No, well, every college does that, though, doesn't it?
Well, no, my school, I'm an alumna of the University of North Carolina, which is the first public university. So it's a little bit different than having to galvanize support for a private school and a private religious school. Although religious institutions have huge endowments, much larger than anything public universities have. So even though you're not giving your Jewish brothers and sisters...
Oh, they're getting it.
Yeah.
Oh, they're getting it. They're getting a lot of money. And I also get it from Penn State. I also get plenty of solicitation from Penn State, but Brandeis is on me Brandeis is on me a lot.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to, it's a secular school. It's not a Jewish school. It's just a Jewish founded school. So it's supposed to be a secular school, but there's a lot of Jews there.
Sure.
But yeah, it's they love to ask for money. But at any rate, I want to get back to the diversity thing because this is something that, like I said, it has to continue. It has to expand. What do you think? I mean, you both actually have an interesting juxtaposition here. You're brand new to the movement and a minority. You're old to the movement and a minority. So what have we done right? What do we still need to do?
Well, I think what we've done right is we educate. And I know as I've progressed with American Atheists over the years, at the beginning I didn't know any. Then I joined American Atheists and I knew a few. I attended the conventions. We would meet the few diverse atheists from France or from England or even from Iran. Okay, Ibn Warwick was actually probably one of the first international atheists that I met. And I think also the ability to communicate so much faster, I think nowadays, is making it easier for all of us to get together and to find people who, and not like-minded people, but people who share a similar philosophical template. Okay, as I said, if we ever started all thinking alike, we might as well shut down American Atheists and start a church.
Right.
So I don't want people to think alike, but think.
Sure.
You know, you and I will reach different conclusions about things. We'll discuss them. It's fine, you know. But I don't know. I think communication, and it's also a generational thing. I think as we're known over time, and I've seen it now in 20 years, where, like you said, when I first started in '92, it was like a lot of elderly white people. But through the work of communicating, of being out there, of trying to network, jumping on the internet when it started, doing all this stuff, we're starting to see now the next generation, which is, I think historically, future generations are always a bit more tolerant. You know, and like with the gay marriage issue, I always thought it'll happen, but it's going to be the younger generation who's going to bring it on because the older people are stuck in their ways. One of the things that atheism has done for me has really prevented me from getting stuck in the old guard type of thinking. And I like that. I like to think that even as I get older, I get more progressive.
But what has the atheism movement done, and maybe I should have been more clear on my question, what has the atheism movement done as you've been in the movement to attract diverse people well? Well, not what we've done in general, but...
All right. Number one is giving me the courage to speak of my convictions, knowing that there are other people. Number two, with American Atheists at the beginning, the support here and the literature and a library to actually go in and see and read books that you really couldn't get anywhere else. All right, Joe Lewis's 10 Commandments, just a fantastic piece of work. I would have never known about Chapman Cohen without American Atheists. So, and also, it's not just them, but just it reignited my desire to learn more, to try and understand more. Because the more I started to understand and think about things, the more I realized how so many other people were just oblivious. Like, you know, and I'm not talking just religious people, but just oblivious to everything around them. Morris Berman, one of my favorite sociologists, has written a couple of books about that. I think being an atheist has really, really opened me up more. It's made me accept more things, you know. And even with the religious people, yeah, you know, you got the magic man. But just don't bug me. Don't use the government to bug me, and I can go on. But I don't know. I think really once you start to meet other people and know other people, and they share that philosophical template with you, it gives you the courage to speak up and to say more and research more. And I think that's what we have to keep doing.
AJ, so you're new to the movement.
That's right.
You've been to the movement. You've been in the movement maybe a year.
A couple years, but you know, with you all for about a little less than a year.
Yeah. So you've been to the American Atheist Convention. You've been to TAM.
That's right. Went to the Secular Coalition for America Summit meeting.
That's right. That's right. So first of all, well, what are we doing wrong? Okay, I want to know what we're doing right. I want to know what we're doing wrong. And what is your perception of the amount of diversity in the movement now?
Okay, I think that the thing that we're doing right is getting online, connecting people. I really agree with that. I think that that's a huge thing, and I think the internet is the best thing to ever happen to atheism, having that information accessible to everyone. I think one of the things we're doing wrong is to assume that there is one right way, or that there is one universal truth that will, you know, get all of the, you know, black people and Mexican Americans and all of these people under our tent. That's not actually true. I think that they're out there. We need to make them feel welcome when they do come, and I think we need to even have grants, scholarships, things like that. I think there should be, perhaps not to the extent that public education had at some point, but some kind of affirmative action set up, because these people are coming from minority backgrounds, even though they might be more affluent or more educated than the general population from that you know, social group, they're still probably not as affluent as their, you know, white male counterparts or something like that. I think that's been really helpful. I was able to go to TAM on a grant. They paid for I still had to get there and you know, find lodging, but just that assistance was what made it possible for me to go.
So TAM had a race-based grant, a minority-based grant?
Not a race-based. They were trying to get more women to TAM.
Okay.
And then they said, you know, women of color are even better. So I think that was the.
So what did you waive the fee?
Yes, no. Someone paid for the fee. They collected money for grants and scholarships, and so I can't remember the amount of money, but I think it was actually helped by Skeptic, if I'm not mistaken.
Excellent.
So things like that really do help. It is very nice to know that the movement wants you to.
Now, when you walk into a room, when you walk into an atheist convention or TAM, do you get the impression that, first of all, do you get the impression that there's a lot of diversity or a little diversity? What is your impression of the amount of diversity in this movement?
First, I'll say my perception of this is perhaps a bit skewed.
Oh.
I went to a predominantly white high school and a public college that had, you know, a lot of diversity for being in North Carolina, but still was in North Carolina. So I'm not one of the people that I'm used to being the only black person in a room, to the extent that I don't even count black people anymore, you know, but I hang around with other black people at these events, and they say, you know, I've seen 3 people in the room that are, you know, that are black or like us or something like that, and I'll realize that I've not even noticed that kind of thing. I think that it's important, and I'm a very, very strong advocate for it, but I really take on a more integrationist view, so it makes it harder for me to explicitly point out different races or different groups. But when it's called to my attention, I think that, you know, there are more than I expect to see pretty much every time. More
than you expect to see, but the people who you're talking to are still noticing it from a negative perspective.
They're still noticing it at all. I mean, to the point of that they would want to count. You know, if there's a plethora, then you don't count anymore. You certainly don't count the white guys in the room.
Right. No, I wouldn't.
Right.
Unless there were just a few.
Right.
I guess.
And then you would. Yes.
Unless it was just a few. So, but diversity really is more than just skin color. It's also breadth of philosophy. And one of the things that I've seen a lot of in the movement is I've seen people finally realizing that diversity is important from a racial issue and from a sexual preference issue. And I see a lot of effort. I perceive that there's a lot of effort to integrate those views. However, I perceive very little effort, and I'm guilty of this myself, of trying to bring in philosophical differences, the atheist Republicans, the atheist right side, the atheist conservatives. I don't know how to address that, and even if that's a diversity issue, I'm sure it is a diversity issue. It's just not the stereotypical diversity issue.
So when you say atheist conservatives, what do these people believe?
Yeah, right.
Well, they're libertarians. A lot of them are libertarians.
So I think I attack this from a skeptical standpoint then. I think that well, libertarians in particular, I don't think that I would agree, and perhaps other people in the movement just disagree philosophically with that perspective from a skeptical standpoint, not necessarily from a lack of God standpoint.
But they're still atheists.
Sure.
They're every bit as atheistic as we are.
Right.
Right, but the difference is that they don't base their philosophical view upon supernatural claims.
Well, right,
And
but they're not represented in the atheist movement. That's my point. I used to view myself.
Are they avoiding the atheist movement, or is the atheist movement avoiding them?
And that's the same question that we can go back to the black atheists that we talked about before. These black atheist groups. Is that a symptom, or is that a symptom of them not feeling welcome, or is that a symptom of them wanting to be separate? Okay, and I don't know where the line is drawn. I don't know the answer to that question.
My first time with that started, one of the first conventions I went to, which was, I think, down south somewhere. I'm trying to remember where it was. But my wife and I kind of like, I guess you would say animal rights activists, animal lovers, okay? Not big on hunting. I met atheists at conventions that were hunters. I just removed that from my whole point of view because that was irrelevant to the atheism.
Right.
They have the freedom to hunt because we have laws that allow them. That's fine. If we want to work on changing the laws, that's a different thing. But I was not going to hold anything like that personal against them because we do share that philosophical template of religion's a little tough to swallow. And we didn't want religion influencing the government, and we didn't want religion trying to push us around.
Right.
So to me, that was our binding factor, was the whole issue of supernaturalism versus real naturalism or reality. So the other little things, whether they're a conservative, whether they're pro-gay marriage or anti-gay marriage, to me, doesn't matter.
Oh, I disagree.
Well, I can't, because you have to promote freedom of thought. So they have the freedom to oppose that.
Yes.
And essentially, I will get into discussions with them about it. But I would not be as dogmatic, say, as the religious are on subjects like that.
What do you disagree
I don't know. Do
about?
you understand what I'm saying? Or do I know what I'm talking about?
Well, no, I understand what you're saying. So you find a common ground with these people based on your shared atheism, and you kind of leave it at that issue.
Yes.
Now, I would say, again, I want skeptical atheists in the movement. I don't want every atheist in the movement. I don't want atheists that are anti-gay rights in the movement. If it were up to me, of course, it's not up to me. Whoever wants to show up and wants to be a part of our cause, if they agree with our aims and principles.
But you have to remember too, a lot of atheists did come from religious backgrounds.
Sure.
And they carry a lot of that detritus throughout their lives. And for some, we can get rid of it.
Right.
For others, for them, it's difficult because their whole culture, they've been brought up like that. So, you know, again, I try to incorporate, find out as much as possible about them and incorporate that and accept. And once we've crossed that bridge and we're accepting each other, then we can work on the finer points.
But I don't want to. I'm not talking about the people who are anti-gay rights. I'm talking about the people who.
Maybe that was a poor example.
Yeah, anti-gay rights. I'm not supportive of that at all.
Well, there's no rational reason.
Right.
That's right,
But
yeah.
but there is a rational reason to be pro small government, workfare not welfare, pro Iraq war rather.
Absolutely.
And these people, I think, have almost no representation, or very little representation in this movement.
I would disagree.
Really?
Hitchens is pro.
Well, this is a
pro
very
Iraq
good point.
war.
This is a very good point. Yeah.
Right. And there are some, and I still admire the guy who would read his stuff. I may disagree on certain issues,
Yeah.
like the Iraq War,
Yeah.
but that doesn't lessen or diminish my admiration for his ability to communicate
Well.
and for the ideas that he does put forth.
Right.
You
So American Atheists is America's oldest nonprofit organization by and for the civil rights for atheists.
And that's PROFIT and PROPHET.
Ah.
Yeah.
We are non-profit.
Nonprofit. We have a little nonprofit right over here.
There he is.
The website is atheists.org. The email address, if you like or hate this show, is avtv@atheists.org. AJ, welcome to American Atheists. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
For Ron Barrier and myself, David Silverman, thanks very much for joining us on American Atheist Viewpoint, where reason reigns and reality rules.
There you go. Thank you.